And we are live. This is the Wrap It Up on Blast Raps post-game show. As always, my name is Sheldon Alexander, and this episode of Wrap It Up is brought to you by Clean Cuts Barbershop, 2013 Danforth Avenue in the east end of Toronto. Clean Cuts, the multicultural barbers that will always keep you fresh for any and all occasions. So go see Skip and the crew. And as a wise man once said, tell them that I sent ya. Check them out on Instagram at Clean Cuts Toronto or give them a call, 416-917-4833 to book your appointments now. Wrap it up, fans. What is going on? It's Friday night. I feel all right. Raptors win 118-112. Thank you guys for tuning in as you do live after each and every Toronto Raptors game for the only live and interactive Toronto Raptors post-game show that there is. Live on Twitter at Shell Alexander, taking your comments and questions. Same thing goes for Instagram. We got another feed there as well at Sheldon Alexander. A couple of just slight instructions, If you're on the Instagram feed right now, you want to see the full feed of me and Q, plus you get the full feed, the full camera look, what the whole set looks like, the proper audio. Go to the link in bio on my Instagram feed. Click that link. You'll see the full pod. If you're on Twitter right now and you're liking what you see, bless us with a like. Bless us with the retweet. That's how we spread the love. That is the Wrap It Up podcast. Again, the only live and interactive Toronto Raptors post-game show there is. So let's grow this. Spread this to the masses, right? Because, again, the Toronto Raptors are here putting in work as they win 118-112 over the New York Knicks. And it wasn't pretty, but it was a win. Their sixth straight win overall. Joined by my guy Q. What is going on, my dude? How you doing? How you feeling on this Friday night, my dude?
I'm good. It's Friday.
Yeah.
Just got paid.
Not bad at all.
Raptors won, so we're good.
Right? Everything seems good on a Friday night and a payday Friday night. Nothing wrong with that either. Raptors, I don't know if they just got paid, but they rich anyway, so they're always paid. Yeah. They're just paid for life. But big boy win for no, not a big boy win. I take that back. Just a win. It's the Knicks. Just a win. And it was ugly. Let's be serious. It was an ugly game, but I think that these games are necessary because the style of play is kind of reminiscent of what the playoffs are going to be like. This was like an ugly game where, the Knicks were mixing it up. The Knicks were, the refs weren't really calling a lot of fouls in the paint. You had to really muck it up. And to see the Raptors win a game like that, I know it's the Knicks, but we're talking about styles, right? You got the win, you mix it up a little, and you won in a style that's not really how this Raptor team plays, but how this Raptor team might have to play if you look ahead towards the playoffs. Yep. So again, Raptors come up with a big win, and they were led by your boy, Kyle Lowry, who led the team in scoring with 26 points, and the thing here, I looked up at the end of the third quarter, I think it was, Lowry had 19, and I was like, wait, where did that happen? Because during the game while we were watching, I said to you, I swear most of Lowry's shots, it wasn't him shooting to score. Yep. It was him shooting to get fouled. And then you look at this box score, 26 points. My guy was 13 of 14 from the free throw line. But that's what leaders do. Find a way to get it done. What'd you make of Kyle Lowry's performance tonight, Q?
Smart veteran play. Like you said, you're going up against the Knicks who, looks like they start like 5 power forwards.
Yes.
So, whether it's on switches and whatever, you're going to get those mismatches. You're going up against the big guy. Mm-hmm. So even if you do blow by him, he's still going to try and come back for the block. So a couple pump fakes and you're at the line shooting easy free throws. So smart. It's Kyle Lowry basketball.
And I give Lowry credit too, because there were some plays where he wasn't even getting the calls. Yep. And, he's used to that because that happens at stretches for Kyle Lowry, but he fights through it and he plays through it. And I think that's the example for the rest of the team as well, because no one was getting calls. Right. Even the Knicks weren't getting calls at certain points, right? And the Knicks were playing a style that was more conducive of getting to the line. They were in the paint, they were mixing it up, and they weren't even getting the free throw calls. Yeah. So it was a real, they reference it on the broadcast, like an old school kind of 90s Knicks basketball, right? A game that you might see end in the 80s, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Kyle Lowry had a solid game, but what I was really impressed with from the beginning was Pascal Siakam. We know that Pascal struggled in the last game, right? Shot a horrible percentage in the last game. And what did he do to start this game? My guy came out and his first 2 buckets were at the rim.
Going to the rim. Yep.
Going to the basket. Then he steps out. And it's funny because he also had the icer, which was a 3.
Yep.
But it still falls in line with what we say about a lot of these Raptors. Start inside, work your way out. And Pascal had a great bounce back performance in terms of just shot selection, I feel like.
Yep.
Finishes with 23 points on 9 of 15 shooting, 2 of 5 from 3. Also give him 7 rebounds and 3 assists just cuz. Also a block. Spicy P, newly touted all-star starter Spicy P.
Yeah.
How did you like his game tonight?
Like one of the listeners, one of the guys on Instagram said, he got his all-star bid. He got his mojo back, right? But like you said, it was a smarter Pascal.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't forcing much.
Yeah.
Right. He was going to the cup. I mean, again, you're playing the Knicks, who have power forward after power forward, big physical guys.
Yeah.
So he went to the basket, got a couple calls, but I even like not the icer play, but the play before that, where he went to the basket strong and dunked the ball.
Yeah.
Right. There was no finger rolls. There was no, so, like we were saying after the other game, other than maybe San Antonio on Sunday, you got the Knicks and Atlanta and a couple of games where, if you're not on your game at that point, there's a good games
you
to
can
have,
get back in,
right? To kind of shoot your way back into the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Make your percentages look a little good in this game. And it was a weird game. And you mentioned the Knicks lineup, and it's super weird, right? Because you look at their starting lineup, and it's Randall, Morris, Taj Gibson, Elfrid Payton, and Bullock.
Yeah.
And that's a weird-ass starting lineup to begin with. But then their bench is like the Young Bucks. You got Knox coming off the bench. You got Ntilikina, and also Robinson. Dotson was hitting some shots. He was getting frisky for them. But it's a weird team, and they have been playing better since the coaching change. I don't know if it's more mentality or just like they seem a lot more forceful. Just like this is a style of play. We have like 8 power forwards, so we might as well make it ugly in the paint, right? Like I don't know if that's what it is, but their style of play seem a lot better of a team than the last time I saw the Knicks play, right? Like just more competitive. They play a lot harder. They have more of an identity. I guess that's the case. And you saw that tonight because I was charting it late, and the last I had it, I think they had like 28 points in the paint. And second chance points. That's what it was. 28 second chance points. That's just hustle, right? And when you're a team that lacks maybe talent at the high end, that's how you have to make up for it and play hard. And that's what kept them in this game. Because I thought, like, did you think this was going to be a blowout at a certain point? Right? Like, I was just kind of waiting for the Raps to blow them out, and it never really happened.
There was a spot once it got up, I think it was at 10, around there in the third quarter. I was like, okay, now they pull away.
Yeah.
Jam done. But like you said, the Knicks fought back. And I think that's where playing the veterans, right, and having that weird starting lineup, but you're playing veteran guys, some who have come from winning situations. Morris was with the Celtics. Taj was with the Bulls when the Bulls were good. So you have guys that know how to play NBA basketball. Right?
For sure.
Whereas I think at the beginning of the season, it was, we got RJ, we got Knox, we got Mitchell Robinson. Let's let our young guys get some play, and the veterans kind of mentor.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, these guys know who they are. Taj Gibson is in the paint, right? He's making it ugly.
Yeah.
Julius Randle only knows one way. He's going downhill to the basket.
Yeah.
Morris, I mean, he's kind of the man around these parts, I guess.
Yeah.
But still, like, he's a gritty type of player that is a good example to be set for the rest of the guys, right? In terms of how to play hard-nosed basketball. But again, the Knicks led after one quarter, and then at the half, the Raptors just, Freddie and Pascal should have had like 2-and-1s that weren't really called. Freddie knocked down a huge three, and Raptors end up having the lead by 3 at half. They come out at halftime, knock down a couple of threes, but as mentioned, the Knicks just kept scrapping and clawing, and they had all these second chance points, and they're right there. But I want to give credit to two guys of, I guess, what we'll call the newly minted bench mob. We're not going to really call them the bench mob. What we call them, the hustle gang.
Yeah.
And, with the injuries, they haven't really been able, as a unit, to put together consistency. But we start to kind of see a bench forming, which would be Terrence Davis, Norm, Serge, Rondé, and then one of Kyle or Fred or Pascal.
Right.
Tonight, got to give it up to Serge, who I thought played really well. A weird stat line for Serge is he had 14 points and 0 rebounds, but both he and Norm shoot 6 of 11. Norm has another solid game at 16 points. How this bench is looking right now, what do you make of both Norm and Serge and just the roles that they're playing for this team, not only tonight, but going forward?
Norm, we'll start with Norm. Norm is just a completely different player over this last, I'll say, month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
He's just, it's not the Norm that we all have watched over the last couple seasons.
Yeah.
He's making smart plays. Nothing's forced. He's confident. His shot's confident.
Yeah.
He knows he can get to the basket
Whenever.
every time, and he does it. But again, it's not forced.
And his shot is just confident, right? Like
Yeah.
whether Norm's coming around screens, whether Norm's one dribble pull up shot, he's on balance, and that's gym work, right? Because it means your footwork, right? When you're getting on balance and shooting in rhythm, that's footwork, that's repetition, that's practice, and you see that in the confidence that Norm's had the past month or whatever it's been, where he's giving you that consistent 15 off the bench, and if you're the Raps, that's exactly what you want in that role coming off the bench and just getting you offense.
Yeah.
And it takes the pressure off Pascal or Kyle or Fred or any of those guys of thinking, I have to get 30 for us to have a chance.
Exactly.
Because you got Serge and Norm both cooking, coming off the bench, being able to give you 15 a night. And that's super helpful. And it also allows you to ease along Terrence Davis, because I know there's a lot of people, and especially there's no Patrick McCaw right now. He's hurt.
Right.
But there's a lot of people who, even when McCaw was there and McCaw's getting minutes, people are always wondering why doesn't Terrence Davis get those minutes, or why is McCaw getting minutes at all? But I go on the flip side of that, because I like what Nick Nurse and this organization is doing with Terrence Davis. They're bringing him along slowly.
Yeah.
They're not really handing him mega minutes, but they'll give him, he gets minutes every game.
Yeah.
But it's not like a heavy load of minutes unless there's injuries, injuries. Other than that, he's going to get under 20 minutes, but still on like a short leash. And that way, you can talk to the rookie, you can ease him in. You don't need him to go out and do anything, but what you're getting from him is consistent effort, consistent defense. And the thing I love the most about him is I feel like he can get way more buckets than he does.
Yeah.
But he doesn't force it. He's under control.
Yeah.
And I like that with this unit on the bench, because I just feel like if Norm and Serge know that they got to get buckets, then Rondé and Terrence know we got to play lockdown defense. We got to get in passing lanes. We got to do all those other things to help this team win games. And obviously you can't read too much into the Knicks,
Right.
because it's the Knicks. But the Raps bench, to me, is a good look. Another good look, your man's Fred VanVleet, who I feel like every time he gets a couple games off, gets a bit of a rest, he comes back and he looks froosh, right? 16 points for Freddie, 6 of 12 shooting, 9 assists. But again, I'm going to beg people to pay attention to when Freddie hits those threes.
Definitely.
Because I feel like they're very timely. What do you make of Freddie? And when Freddie is cooking, how much better is this Raptors team?
What I like about what has happened over the last couple of games is it almost seems like him and Kyle take turns, right? So
They play
it's,
off each other very
exactly.
well.
So they do play off each other real well. They know when they're on the court and who's on the court around them, what their role is, and they play into that role perfectly.
Yeah.
And then down the stretch, when you need a big bucket, Fred is there to make those shots. And it's just, if you look up, it's the third quarter.
Yeah.
The Raps are down two, and Fred pulls up from like 5 feet behind the 3-point line. It's going in.
Yeah.
Right. It just seems like he just has a knack for hitting those shots at the right time.
He pulls up with confidence.
Yeah.
With confidence
Whether it's to stop the other team's run or to continue the Raptors run, it's Fred that makes those shots.
I got distracted because I just got a message from our guy, Jeff Berg, who's a regular here on the Wrap It Up podcast. He writes in and says, we're going to be tied for second because the Heat are down 17 right now. And as I click over to the box score, it's funny because, when at the top line of ESPN, it said they were down 2, but it's just because I didn't refresh the page. Yeah. And then when I did refresh the page, it was like, whoa, 103-91. Clippers are beating the Miami Heat. So that is big news for the Toronto Raptors. And again, you got to take advantage of these games because normally, if a game slipped like this, yeah, it's bad. Yeah. But in this instance where the stakes are so high this season, because I keep trying to tell people this, you really don't want to come in 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. Because that's a tough first round matchup. Exactly. So if you can get to second, you got to do that. And how do you do that? Take care of business and win these games that might have slipped in years before last year. But you know what I mean? Might have slipped where you just really don't have it.
The Knicks, you don't really think. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe you had a nice night out last night in New York celebrating with Spicy P.
and on top of that, I mean, we are coming up on the All-Star break. Mm-hmm. Being in second place, they announced the reserves.
Yep.
Right? And on top of that, Budenholzer can't be the coach again, right?
True.
So second place going into the All-Star break means Nick Nurse will be coaching the All-Star game.
Correct.
Right? So there's that. There's also, again, being in second place. The second place Raptors, although Kyle probably deserves a spot anyway, it ensures a second Raptor getting a pick. So, again, you're going in next week. I think you got Atlanta and Detroit. Winnable games. For sure. Where you can also maybe pull away in the standings. More importantly, you're pulling away in the standings. But aside from that, you're going into the All-Star break, and Nick Nurse might be coaching. Right now he's in a position to coach the All-Star team, and Kyle's waiting to get that call saying that he's a reserve. So it's perfect timing.
And again, this is one of the things we touched on last podcast, but I want to emphasize this because there's a very funny dynamic amongst Raptors fans where they complain about being slighted by the U.S. media and how many national TV games they get and all that stuff. And I'm just going to remind you guys again, in the second half of the NBA season, once the NFL is over, the NBA, if you pay attention, the NBA's major nights, okay? They have ESPN doubleheaders on Wednesday, TNT doubleheaders on Tuesday and Thursday. Friday's another ESPN doubleheader. Then there's Saturday games and Sunday games. If you pay attention to those schedules, mostly all of those games will involve the Clippers, the Lakers, the Celtics, the Sixers, the Bucks, like all of the, if you started the season, all those top teams, those are all the teams that are playing right now on national TV in those big boy games because of TV ratings. So the flip side, while the Raptors have this run where they're playing the Knicks, the Bulls, right? Because remember, as NFL ends, this is why the NBA wants to put all these big time matchups in prime time for people to be able to watch and be like, oh, basketball season. What? Lakers are playing against the Celtics.
Down the stretch, exactly.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, be careful what you wish for in terms of these games and be happy with the schedule that the Raps have where you got a back-to-back Cleveland and Detroit coming up, right?
Exactly. Right. And then with the Leafs always mostly playing on Saturday nights, it helps the Raptors because they don't play those Saturday evening games.
That would all be against like the Clippers. Yep. Right? So it's funny. It's a funny dynamic, but just something that, I urge you to pay attention to as the season goes along. But let's get to some comments, though, because there's lots of comments, people filtering in. Because, of course, as I always like to mention, We are the only live and interactive Toronto Raptors post-game show that there is. And we do take your comments and questions live on Twitter at Shell Alexander. Same thing goes for Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And this is something we call a little Ask on Blast. Yep. So let's go into the comment section, which is full, which is heavy. And I'll start with Mike on Twitter. Mike says, Spicy P was looking a lot better tonight. Totally agree. And maybe it's just the residue of being named an all-star starter. But I guess maybe at this point, Spicy P named an all-star starter, along with in the East with Trae Young.
Yep.
Who else is the East? Giannis. Trae Young, Kemba, and Giannis, Embiid, and Spicy P. Yep. Those are your Eastern Conference, the pool of the starters. And out West, you're talking LeBron, Anthony Davis, Luka, Kawhi, and James Harden. So, I mean, not much real debate on the West side. Yep. On the East side, I mean, I woke up this morning and our group text was like, Phil, I woke up, there was like 80 messages. And I'm looking at everyone's arguing about Trae Young being a starter or not. And I thought it was an amazing, good conversation. But the reminder I'll give is that this is exactly why the NBA does this, to get people talking. Yep. And we're happy that, you know, Spicy P was elected a starter, but could that spot have easily have gone to Kyle instead of a Trae Young or instead of a Kemba? I guess that's why the second seed is so important.
yeah. I mean, exactly.
It's interesting though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's for the fans.
Kyle and Fred kind of split that guard vote, which is why only one of them got in. I think if Fred was still kind of backup point guard Fred, then Kyle at least would have got more votes. He would have got way more votes. Yeah. So, you know,
it's interesting.
It is what it is. But I think either way, Kyle will get the nod.
Yeah. He'll still be an all-star. Yeah. And I still think that's the coolest stat, man. The fact that we mentioned it on the last pod, and it's funny because I tweeted it a couple days ago before it actually happened. But it is really cool, man. I mean, it's a big deal that Raptors fans should feel proud of the fact that after Pascal was named as an all-star starter, the Raptors have now become the only team since 2015 to have an all-star starter each and every single game of the All-Star. Of the All-Star game. Yeah. Let me say that again. Every single year since 2015, the Toronto Raptors have had an all-star starter, and they're the only team in the NBA to do that. That is something to be proud of. And, of course, the fact that it's been multiple players in terms of Kyle Lowry twice, DeMar twice, Kawhi last year, and now Pascal Siakam. Yeah. That's a big deal. And that's something that, again, no other franchise in the NBA can say. You got to feel good about that. So, yes, Spicy P looking better. The Toronto Raptors as a whole looking better as well. Let's get to some more comments, though. Let's see. Marshall checks in and says, "What up, May? Been watching your videos on YouTube for a couple seasons. Never caught the live show." Well, salute to you. Hopefully
Welcome.
You subscribe. Appreciate the subscribe.
Welcome.
You know, whether you watch the live show or not, hit us with bless us with a subscribe and tune in however you can. We appreciate that. Thank you for walking with the show here because this is for you, the people. And hey, let us know what you think of the show, what you think of the Raps, and we'll read your comments live for sure. Jace Shutterbug on Twitter says, "Successful wins in this streak for the Raptors." I agree with that because there was a lot of different kind of wins. Yeah. If you go back to, you know, while they were dealing with the injuries, there were a lot of tough losses where they kept blowing leads and either they lost the game late or just squeezed it out. This one, even though it was close, it got down to 2 at certain points. It still wasn't really, they didn't blow it. Like you still felt confident that they would win. No?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, obviously it's the Knicks, so yeah, we were expecting a 30-point victory and an easy game, but those games don't help you. Yeah. These games where you gotta convert down the stretch, where you gotta play defense, and it's tough to get out the building. That those games, that's what the playoffs is, right? You're not blowing teams out in the playoffs, right? So these games, whether it's against the Knicks or whether it's against the Clippers or whether it's against Philadelphia. When they mean something, when it's hard fought, it helps you in the long run.
Yeah. We were just talking about the all-star teams. The all-star starters were obviously missed. And, a game against the Knicks is a good opportunity for us to also talk about just other things going on in the NBA. So as people continue to write in, A Musco 10 on Instagram says, I'm not sure if Kemba should have started, but open to opinions.
Okay.
I'm all here, but I'm here for the discussion. I like how that comment was phrased, right? Because it's not all about statements. It's a discussion. Kemba, I'm not mad at Kemba starting because I think Boston is having a really good year.
Boston had to have one guy.
And Kemba is the leader of that team.
Definitely.
And you know what? If not just to emphasize the fact of Kyrie being such a disaster last year with the Celtics, that proving that they were better without him.
Yeah.
And even now, if you go to the Nets were better last year without Kyrie than they are this year. So if not just for that alone, I'm not mad at Kemba being an all-star. More comments though. Dan checks in and says Jimmy over Trey. But Jimmy Butler was listed as a forward, right? A front court player. So that was the interesting thing, which Miami might want to reassess for next year, right? Because that might get Jimmy more easily into the starting lineup.
Yeah. I mean, what I think, because we don't play East versus West anymore, and this is one of the comments I made in our group chat earlier, was why vote based on East versus West, right? If you really want the best 24 players,
that's fair,
right? Because I think Westbrook and Dame,
one of them is not
one of them, right? Neither of them will make it, right? If Steph Curry was still playing, does Luka get the nod? Does Harden come off the bench?
Harden's probably coming off the bench.
It'd probably be Harden, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't have Harden should be starting. We all agree with that, right? So why even if you don't play East versus West? Why even?
I think possibly the only reason they would hang on to that is so that you ensure more teams are represented.
Yeah.
Right? Because then you'd run into problems where you have like the 70-win Golden State team getting
4 players.
But exactly. Then, which would happen anyways, but then if you have another team that's like just behind them, and in most seasons, not like this season where the East is a lot more balanced compared to the West, right? But if you had it as lopsided as we've seen in past seasons, maybe you're getting a lot more players on the West and they don't really want that. But still an interesting point, definitely. Exodus Movements checks in on Instagram and says, Kyle is one of the best guards in the NBA. I mean, it's kind of tough to argue with that at this point because Kyle Lowry, I mean, say what you want, but my guy continues to put up numbers.
Yep.
The high end of how we'll always look at Kyle Lowry, like the high end has gone up, and that's thanks to Kawhi Leonard. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, Kyle Lowry has still been a solid NBA point guard and an all-star. This is going to be his 6th straight year as an all-star if he makes it. So it's tough to be mad at Kyle Lowry, especially if you're Toronto Raptors. Let's switch gears a little though, because Ragul checks in on Instagram and says, in order for Toronto to go far in the playoffs, OG needs to help Nick Nurse and others. OG, I feels like the ire of the Raptors fan base seems to bounce around. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
It was McCaw, it was Norm, it was Marc Gasol. Mm-hmm. I think now people are setting their sights in on OG. And it might not even be the fault of OG. It might be the fault of Norm Powell playing as well as he has.
Exactly.
That makes it look at OG, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay." But what's your take on OG?
I think, obviously, offensively, OG is still growing. He's not maybe at the point where we all thought he would be, or take the step we thought. But again, like we said, Fred's taken a big step.
Yeah.
Norm's taken a huge step. Terrence Davis has come out of nowhere. So, be happy, Raptor fans. Like, this is a good problem to have where there's really not enough minutes to play everybody that deserves to play, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, OG is, on any given night, your 7th offensive weapon, right?
Yeah.
Look around the league. Look at even the top teams, even the deepest of teams. How many points is the 7th best player on the team or 7th best offensive player on the team, the 7th option? How many points does he average? 6, 7, 8 points?
Yeah.
So, if you're expecting OG to come out with a consistent 15 every night, that means maybe Siakam is only averaging, Instead of averaging 23, he's averaging 17. That means maybe Norm doesn't hit the stride that he's hit, right? Maybe Terrence Davis doesn't come into the game at all,
Yeah,
right? So it's a give and take.
for sure.
I think OG is in the starting lineup as long as he plays defense and hits some of those wide open threes. I'm good with it.
And it's also like what the realistic expectations are for OG,
Yeah.
right? Because let's be honest, Norm and Freddie have both surpassed our expectations.
Exactly.
I wish I had my own stats in front of me that I sent in for our show today
Yeah.
on Tim and Sid. But we had the board up and I looked up the stats. And the funny thing is, Norm is up plus 7 points off of last year's average.
Yep.
Norm is up 7 points. Fred's up 7 points. And I'm saying 7 points and it's like 7.2
Yeah.
or 7.3. So forgive me if I'm not exactly to the decimal point. But
Siakam's about 6.
yeah, Siakam's at 6 and Kyle's like at 5.8.
Yeah.
So you have 4-year top dudes averaging at least 5 to 6 more points than they were last year.
And Marc Gasol shooting the ball. You can't. Even Serge is giving you big
And so obviously those numbers are
Spoiled.
inflated
We're
because
spoiled.
obviously those numbers are inflated because obviously some of those guys were out at certain
Right,
times.
exactly.
So the other guys had to go ham, but still the point remains that even when guys were down, they were able to step up. And we didn't really see OG really step up like that
Yeah.
when the minutes and the points were there for him. And so maybe that's where the frustration lies.
I mean, he had a couple games. Yes, there is some.
Like he's not having a bad season. is what
Exactly.
I'm
He's not having a bad season. There is room for him to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's his 3rd year in the league.
Yeah.
Last year, I forget how many games he played, but he didn't have a full season. He was dealing with some stuff. Didn't get into the playoffs. So there is some more growth, right?
Yeah.
Even his rookie season, he came in off of the Achilles tear, so he didn't start where everybody else. He didn't have training camp. He didn't start where everybody else started, right? So there's still room for him to grow, and there's probably not a better place in the league for him to take those next steps, right?
Totally true. And more comments
Patience.
here regarding OG. We head to Twitter and JC says, I love OG. He'll be back 100%. He's had really great games this season.
He's had a couple games. He's had some good games.
Raptor Homer on Twitter says, OG is just 22 years old and he'll be fine once the real season starts. That guy Damone on Instagram says OG got to work on his ball handling skills. If he improves on this skill, his offensive game will flourish. In my
Definitely
opinion,
something he needs to work on. But again, like you said, he's 22. You're forgetting that this is the NBA, so this isn't really a situation where you work on it during the season, where you go into these games and experiment, right? So just like DeMar back in the day, every year he came back with a new skill. Siakam every year he comes back with a new skill. Fred every year comes back better. OG will have his time.
yeah. Lisa checks in on Twitter and says, Knicks low-key played good, but they don't know how to play. They beat the Heat, remember. Raptors, glad the Raptors pulled out a win. It's true. The Knicks were right there, and they just didn't really make enough plays down the stretch. Like, it's one thing to stay in a game and keep a game close, but then what do we famously say? What do you do in winning time?
Exactly.
And they're not really there yet. And I mean,
They don't really
who's
they
their
don't really
go-to
have
guy?
a guy. Like
Yeah.
some days it's Randall, some days it's Morris.
Yeah.
They don't really have a leader at the point guard position to really settle them into their offense.
Yeah.
It's the Knicks. Like a couple more lottery picks, and I think they'll be okay.
What do you think of this? Someone asked, Norm should be the front runner for Sixth Man of the Year. I don't know about the front runner because you got Montrez and Lou Will coming with 20 a night off the bench, like consistent. I mean, maybe if they split votes, but even still, I don't really see that as being a thing. But it's funny that Norm's at least entered
He's in
that realm.
If Norm
If he can sustain this, obviously.
if Norm sustains this and the Raptors again are battling the Bucks for top spot in the East, or at least solidify themselves as a second in the East, he'll be in the conversation. He'll definitely get some votes. But again, with the way the Clippers are built, Lou Will is basically a starter. He just doesn't start the game. Like he gets starter minutes, so it's pretty hard and especially again with the balance of the Raptors, for Norm to really take that next jump and start averaging 20, 21, 22 points a game.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's definitely in the conversation.
Totally agree with that. I think Norm, it's just funny, man, to see the fact that Norm has been flourishing so well and doing the thing that everyone's been
Yep.
waiting to see him do. It's great to see. I'll say that. DVAD59 on Instagram says, I love Kyle. Look at where he was from the onset of his tenure to now. I mean, they mentioned Jose Calderon was at this game,
Yep.
and longtime Raptor fans will remember when Kyle Lowry first came here, he was Jose Calderon's backup.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but I remember when the trade happened, I thought, oh, I like this trade. Kyle Lowry could possibly be the best player on our team, right? Like, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Like, potentially, he could be the best player on the Raptors. And it didn't really work out that way early.
Nope.
And it's to hear the stories of how he tells it now, where he thought he was just here for the 1 year. Like, that's kind of how it went early. Because I remember him coming in and just jacking, right? And trying to get his. And then, we all know how the story all played out. But to DVAD's point, it's incredible when you think about how this started to where it's at now.
And just think, if the Knicks were willing to surrender a first-round pick, we might be playing Kyle Lowry tonight.
If the Knicks didn't trade for Andrea Bargnani first, and then they didn't get hesitant over making another trade with Masai, they would have traded for Kyle Lowry, and who knows what would have happened. And there's so many what ifs, right? The way that this worked, because I was watching Steve Nash on the Knuckleheads podcast with Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles, which really good podcast, by the way. They do really good interviews. But Steve Nash was on there talking about his free agency before he went to LA, and it was between LA, the Knicks, and the Raptors.
Yep.
And that's another huge what if, right? Like, what happens if we do get Steve Nash instead of Kyle Lowry, right? Like, there's so many things that are so weird. But, hey, the way that it all played out, what a time to be alive.
Definitely.
Oh, man, so much fun. So many more comments here in the chat group. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Gozy, haven't seen in a while, but I see Gozy on the chat here. He says, don't get me wrong, I'm happy with our depth. That being said, I'm worried about what that will mean come playoff time. I can't help but think of when we had the bench mob. I would urge that this bench, like Norm, Serge, and Rondé, I like counting on those guys for consistent production night in, night out. I can bank on that. I feel very confident that I can bank on that in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now, Terrence, after that, he's a rook, so you're going to take what you get from that.
Yeah.
And then know that those guys will be on the floor with one of Kyle or Fred.
Right.
I'm not mad at the bench. And again, it's not even, what have we learned over the past few years, right? It's not about your full bench. It's about, you need about 2 or 3 guys that you can count on.
Definitely.
And then you're good to roll in the playoffs. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm not.
No, we run 8 deep. Everybody knows what their role is. On any given night, we know Nick Nurse is a guy who takes advantage of matchups. Mm-hmm. So when the matchup presents itself, Terrence will get in the playoffs, right? Yeah, exactly. You don't need. I mean, even when we did have the bench mob, it didn't work, did it? So
also true.
You have to. It comes down to the playoffs.
This is gonna sound weird. I'm more worried about the Raptors' top level talent in the playoffs than I am worried about the bench. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, definitely, because it's it's playoff time. It's no longer regular season basketball, right? So at playoff time, your stars have to be your stars, night in, night out.
And it's all fun and games because we all remember, yes, Freddie hit big shots in the conference finals and into the finals. Yes, Norm woke up and had certain moments, but Kawhi was a walking 30-piece night in, night out for the entire playoff run. And so that's literally what you need if you're going to make another deep run. You need that top-level talent. And who's going to be that guy? Hey, we got lots of time to figure it out. Yep. And the thing is, as much pressure as people are putting on this because it's the chance to repeat, I look at it kind of differently. I look at it as you're going forward, and this is a learning curve, right? Like you're going to get into the playoffs and you're going to learn a lot about Pascal and Fred and Norm and your kids and Terrence Davis, your kids going forward. That's what I'm excited for. And maybe I just have a different mentality because, again, my expectations aren't about winning a championship again, but going to just have a lot of fun. There's a lot of people asking about questions about the trade deadline, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to save that talk for a couple games closer to the deadline. But I see all you guys asking about trades, people saying I think we should trade OG because we could get something back for. Like, it's getting spicy in this, and I'm not going there yet. But just know, in the coming pods, send us your questions from now, and we will definitely answer them. Or take it to the comment section, and that conversation guaranteed will be heated. But until then, this Raptors game again. Raptors win their 6th straight game in a row, 118-112 in New York over the Knicks, as they're led by Kyle Lowry. Yes, Kyle Lowry. And whoa, hold on. Miami has made a huge run, by the way.
Wow.
And Miami is only down 3 points right now. 6 points as I refresh the page. They're down 6 points with 34 seconds left. So I'd assume that's an L.
Yeah.
Right? We could chalk that up as an L?
Yeah.
Nope, I lied. 3 points. They just hit a 3. So close things going on in Miami right now. Okay. I'm about to end this podcast and turn that game on, to be honest. But the point remains, the Raptors remain in the thick of things for second place in the Eastern Conference with their win over the New York Knicks as they take care of business, and Kyle Lowry finishes leading the way with 26 points. Pascal having a nice bounce back game, 23 points. Someone in the chat tells me Waiters hit a clutch 3. Waiters Island. That's amazing. But big win for the Raps. Hopefully Miami will struggle and lose at the end of this game, and the Raptors will be talking about being in second place. But either way, great game for the Toronto Raptors. You take the win as you can get them, as the Knicks are playing a lot more scrappy as of late. So this was a game that you could have got snuck up on and got. Right? So good win for the Raps. But until their next game against the Spurs, sorry. Q, what's going on with you? Tell the people where they can hit you up, where they can find you, man.
I'm here whenever I can be. But during the week, in between time, you can catch me at simply_just_Q. That's Instagram and Twitter. And also at DDS Caps on both social media sites. Check us out at ddscaps.com.
That guy Damone says, big up Q. Big up Sheldon in the chat. Big ups to you too. Really appreciate you guys watching and tuning in, rocking out with us on a Friday night on this, the only Toronto Raptors live and interactive post-game show that we like to call Wrap It Up. You can find us live on Twitter at Shell Alexander. Same thing goes for Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. We take your comments and questions. We love it. We love the live convo. But if you ever miss it or you want to catch the full thing because you came in the middle, it's all right. We got you covered. This becomes a podcast wherever you get your podcasts, on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, SoundCloud, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Bless us with the subscribe button, the follow button. Tell your friends. Spread the love that is the Wrap It Up podcast as we continue to watch the defending NBA champion Toronto Raptors. Till next time, my name is Sheldon Alexander, and as you can see, if you're watching this video, I got my Dream Chasers hat. Shouts to Meek Millie, because as we end every podcast, I used to pray for times like this, to rhyme like this. This is the Wrap It Up on Blast Raps post-game show, as always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.
Peace, people.
On blast.